You're going out there and, you're doing your rounds and you're trying to, observe what's going on. Inmates are constantly going to be hitting you up, for, asking you silly questions and stuff, trying to get you off your game. There's going to be another percentage of those folks, though, that are also, they do actually need some help, and they actually, are just asking things because they're not familiar with what's going on. And in the mix of all of that, it can be very difficult to control how many people are approaching you, what kind of things they're trying to get you engaged in. And meanwhile, they're trying to take your eyes off of the other things that may be going on out there.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, I know there's a bit of an echo maybe or something. We are moving, so my house is empty. This is the house we have moved into. So I am finding a spot in the basement, which will be the future Tier Talk studio. So bear with me. But this is a good thing. We are evolving. We're moving forward. Hey, guys, I have a great topic that's going to come your way. We're going to give out 4 tips when conducting your rounds as a correctional officer. Russ Hamilton is going to join in on the discussion. We believe we have 4 very good tips that can be applied during each of your rounds. Again, it's not all-inclusive. It's just meant to start a discussion. So me and Russ picked on 4 tips that we feel may not be so well known. And if it is known, it's not bad to be reminded of these great tips and also be provided with a perspective as to why these tips are needed. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you brave men and women that work in corrections. So please don't forget to subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Also, I'd like to show some love to our 3 sponsors. One, we have American Military University. If you guys are looking for a higher level of education, if you want to bring experience into the classroom, American Military University is a great school. It's an online school. And they also have been supporting corrections since day one. Let's just do since day one, because they've been supporting me since I started this podcast years ago. So guys, if you get a chance, please check out American Military University. We also have Guardian RFID. So from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. And we also have the WRAP, W-R-A-P. Controlling combative subjects quickly and in an upright position so they can breathe has never been more important. Departments such as Washington, D.O.C., L.A. County, San Diego County, and hundreds of other facilities across the U.S. trust and believe in the WRAP restraints. Go to saferestraints.com for contact information and mention Tier Talk to receive instructor training at no cost. Lower liability at your facility and for your personnel with the WRAP. Give the WRAP a call today, 1-800-THE-WRAP-911. 1-800-WRAP-911. And guys, if you're unfamiliar with the WRAP, there's a link in the description to a video that will show you exactly what the WRAP is. Remember, that's the WRAP, W-R-A-P. So guys, we are going to be discussing some tips. There's 4 tips here for conducting your rounds. And I have the famous Russ Hamilton. What's up, Russ? How you doing?
Hey, Anthony, glad to be here, man. It's going to be a great discussion.
Hey, Russ, do you mind introducing yourself again to the audience?
Yeah, sure, everyone. I'm Russ Hamilton. I'm a former and now retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections. Also, I've done a little bit of work in the juvenile, in a juvenile detention facility. I also work now for a private company that we work with probationers that have reentry and rehabilitation needs. And I'm also the founder of Keepers of Chaos, where we do everything correctional. We focus on professionalism, training, content, and other knowledge.
Right. And guys, by the way, if you guys do get a chance, if you're on Facebook, please check out Keepers of Chaos. It's a great group. There's some mentoring going on there, just a very informative group. And I love being a part of that community. And believe it or not, the Keepers of Chaos community and the Tier Talk community are very well connected. We kind of help each other grow, if you will. All right, so let's get right into the tips. The first one is my favorite tip. I actually wrote a whole book on this. Guys, if you get a chance, I do have a book out there called Inmate Manipulation Decoded. It's out on Amazon. The link to that is also in the description. But I'm going to let Russ go with this first. The first tip is controlling each interaction you have with the inmate population. Don't get distracted. All right, Russ, what do you got on that tip?
Okay. There's actually a lot more than you would think to unpack in that particular tip, because what happens is you're going out there and you're doing your rounds and you're trying to observe what's going on. Inmates are constantly going to be hitting you up, for asking you silly questions and stuff, trying to get you off your game. There's going to be another percentage of those folks though that are also, they do actually need some help, and they actually, are just asking things because they're not familiar with what's going on. And in the mix of all of that, it can be very difficult to control how many people are approaching you, what kind of things they're trying to get you engaged in. And meanwhile, they're trying to take your eyes off of the other things that may be going on out there. So what you want to do is you want to try and put yourself in a position where you can always see as much of whatever you're going into. You may be going into a day room. You may be going into a dorm. You might be going into some housing unit that has cells or something, but you want to always try and be able to see things. You also want to be able to also distance yourself from an inmate asking a question. Never let them get up so close to you that they can, take advantage of you, maybe start a physical altercation. You want to be controlling those distances. And when you have a lot of different things going on around you, it can be difficult to control that. But always have that first and foremost in your mind, and, try and make sure that you're giving these guys the proper information. Tell them no initially if you don't know exactly what's going on, or if you think that they might be trying to get one yes out of you because they've already got 10 other no's. And make sure that that interaction serves your purpose, not theirs, right? Because there's a lot of different things you can do with that interaction. You may have to give them some information, but also you're receiving information. Sometimes it's what they say. Sometimes it's what they don't say. Sometimes it's just the fact that that they're looking around and they're trying to be that distraction. Maybe that individual is your bird dog for the day. Maybe he's been assigned to you. And I've had that happen where I have one individual that they get tasked with following me around and handing me off and making sure that people are forewarned where I'm going to be and what I'm doing. So take all of those things into consideration and use it to your advantage.
Yeah, and we'll explore a little bit that in the second tip that we have. I want to mention something, guys. When we do our rounds, we know specifically what it is that we're trying to accomplish, whether it's a count, whether it's safety and security checks, whether it's searches, whatever it is. There's a goal in mind. We're not just randomly doing rounds. We have a purpose. The concern here is you can't allow people to distract you from that purpose. I remember walking down dorms, and right at the very beginning when I was coming down, an inmate would try to get my attention, and I'd be like, hold on, I'll be right with you. And I would still continue on the path that I had in mind. And then I would come back and say, hey, so what do you got? And most likely they had nothing at that point left to say. It was more of a distraction to stop me from moving forward. So when you go do your rounds and you're doing whatever it is, you got to have that end game in mind. What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? And don't allow anyone to take you off that unless there's a higher emergency there. Obviously, then it is what it is, like a medical emergency or a fight. I get it. But on the routine tours where there's nothing emergent, then you continue what it is that you have to do and don't allow yourself to get distracted from the games that inmates could play. And with that said, how do you not allow yourself to get distracted is by controlling those interactions you're having with those inmates. If you're doing a round and they come up to you, this is your time. You let them know, unless it's emergent, I'll get to you when I get to you. I'll get to you when I get to you. My key is I'm here. I got to do something. If you had a concern, well, then you could have told me that a few minutes ago when I wasn't in the midst of conducting my rounds or what's expected of me at this point. They had ample time to talk to you before, but it's so funny how all of a sudden now they want to talk to you in the midst of doing your rounds, in the midst of doing your searches, in the midst of doing your count. It's not the time for it. Now it's my time, and I have a job that has to get done. So you're going to have to wait until I come back to you and see what your concern is. Again, non-emergent concerns. But the key here, guys, is total control is about literally controlling the time, place, and the dialogue. Don't let the inmates, when you're doing your rounds, take you down these rabbit holes. Guys, if there's a concern and I come back and say, okay, again, on my time, on my place, what's the concern? And they're running you around. Nope. Hey, What's the concern? I don't have time to be going down all these other holes. Just tell me what it is, and then we'll figure it out. But in the meantime, I'm not here to have this friendly dialogue. I'm here to understand what the concern is and move forward, especially, as I'm saying, during those rounds when there's a defined purpose. So that's number one. I thought that was a great collaboration for me and Russ, as always. So now we'll get to number two. And this kind of relates into what Russ was getting at. But again, very important. We want to reiterate it. But it's letting your partner know where you're at all times. And even if it's not a partner, you still have maybe, hopefully, someone in the cameras above you, like a local control point, or worst comes to worst, you know, if you're doing a tour, you know, maybe call your supervisors or somebody over the radio, let them know, hey, be advised, I'm taking a tour of the dorm. I'm going into the controlled area. Just want to give you the heads up that I'm going to be in that area, so people are aware. But go ahead, Russ, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is one where, you know, in a perfect world, we would always have at least one partner with us anyway. But even if we're partnered up with someone, we still need to tell someone else. We need to have someone still watching our back and monitoring what's going on. You know, one of my big techniques is that, you know, if I was going to be going in and out of some housing units and, you know, I had access to my tower guys, I'd be talking to them. I'd say, hey, you know, we're going to be down in this area. If anything starts to look, you know, a little bit out of place, or if there's suddenly a disturbance there, those guys knew then that they could, you know, sound the alarm and then put it out there, you know, on the radio. Hey, staff is down, you know, at such and such dorm or such and such building, in order to get response there. And for those people that are responding to have, you know, a level of knowledge and foresight that, hey, there are staff in this area and we need to account for them first. So it's always important to try and make sure that someone can account for where you are over, you know, the shortest periods of time that we can. We don't want someone or a team of guys, you know, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, to suddenly end up missing, end up being assaulted, maybe being held hostage, and nobody knowing about it for 10, 15, 25 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. So always be sure to, you know, get that communication out there, and for us to, you know, be mindful of that. If you're receiving that information, make sure you're checking back on those guys every few minutes, just a quick something on the radio or a phone call, whatever it is, because those time limits are going to matter, and those people are already in a dangerous position. Hell, it's a prison, it's a jail, whatever it is, it's dangerous.
Right, and I want to add something to that too, guys. So before you enter the controlled part of the compound, this may actually go out to civilians as well, because I know custody may have a way to check people in, so we know that people are at that post. We know where they're supposed to be. But for civilians, you guys should be signing into a logbook the moment you enter that controlled compound, the moment you're in that secured facility. Because if something happens, we as let's say custody and security, we may go to the lobby officer and pull out that book and say, listen, did we get everybody here today? That could be our checklist. And then we could notice, okay, well, we have everybody here that's signed in. You know, so now we know that these people, you know, are where we need. But if you're not signing in, if you're not telling people in that logbook, hey, that I'm inside that building, if something happens and we look at that logbook and you're not there, we may not know to look for you. You know, we're going to think we have everybody. That's why it's very important, guys, that when you're going into that controlled area, you know, especially this is for civilians, that you're signing yourself in to those areas. So we know where to look for you. And we know at that point, hey, guys, I still got a civilian that's unaccounted for. How do you know? Because the logbook in the lobby has this person going in, but I never saw the person sign out. So again, I think that's great information. And that kind of goes with what Russ is exactly saying. Let people know where you are at so we can find you if needed, or if you need somebody, we can get right there because we know where you're at. So that's tip number 2. Hey, Russ, before we go into tip number 3, anything about that logbook in the lobby that you want to add on to, about kind of knowing, signing yourself in and letting people know that you're in the controlled area?
Yeah, you know, you always have to remember that, you know, that logbook or whatever system that you have of keeping people in, you know, and logging people out is really important if we have a critical incident. If we have a critical incident, like suddenly, let's say some keys turn up missing or something like that, we still have to do a staff accountability even in a situation like that. Or if, we have a bad count. So all of those things are important. And if you're signed in and then you forget to sign out, we might spend, hours or, at the very least minutes trying to find where you're at. We might have to lock the whole institution down over some lost keys that were found. And now suddenly we don't know where you are. Could those keys in that interim have been used to draw you into some, space and now you're a hostage? We don't know. And until we do know, we have to act as if, that potential scenario is real. So you just have to, think along those lines and make sure that you do your due diligence, checking in, checking out, letting people know where you are.
And guys, the reason why that gets put into this dialogue of conducting your rounds is because part of the officer's round is to check where those civilians are, to make sure that they're where they need to be. So again, we're supposed to help them by letting them know where we're at. And I like what Russ said, treat that logbook with the respect it deserves. Don't forget to sign out. Don't forget to sign in. Make it part of your routine. I go in, sign in. I leave, I sign out, because the officers are responsible for you in those locations. So give some return respect and let them know, because that's the best way we can provide you with safety, is by knowing. I mean, I again, with the civilians real quick, even when you go into an area, make sure the officer knows you're there. Don't just walk into the area and go right to the inmate. You let the officer wait until the officer gets there and say, hey, I'm just going to go in. I got to go talk to these inmates. Not a problem. Be in the officer's sight. People are like, oh, well, I don't know. Do I report directly to the officer? Yes, I do, even as administration. I don't walk right there. I go right to the podium and wait for the officer to get there. And I tell the officer, hey, if it's okay, can I go ahead and check out these inmates? But Gangi, you're in administration. Why are you asking for permission? Because it's the officer's house. No matter what, it's still the officer's house. Unless there's a reason for me to question the officer's integrity, I'm going in and I'm giving that officer the respect they deserve, because they run the house. And that's the best way that they can protect me, is by letting me be a little bit subordinate into the needs of that house and get there, and again, build that respect from the officer. Okay, so that's number 2. I'm going to let Russ start on these other 2, because these were Russ's ideas, and I want Russ to kind of lead the way, and then I'll compliment if need be. But Russ has pay attention to your entrances and exits. What do you got, Russ?
Okay, so wherever you're at, wherever you're doing these rounds at and stuff, there's times where you're going to be, possibly keying doors or asking doors to be electronically opened. Whatever it is, that doesn't matter. But what you have to think about is every time that you start to walk through a door, or even if it's just an entryway that provides some potential, concealment for inmate activity, you're in danger, right? And what I mean by that is as you walk through that door, there is the potential for you to be ambushed. And so what we want to do is we want to try and negate that. And, it's really pretty simple. Every chance you get to, slice that pie as you come in through that door, you look at the furthest point away that you can, and then you try and look, toward the arc of it, and then to your hard 90, wherever that's going to be, so that you can make sure that it's free and clear. And, unfortunately, our particular profession is replete with instances where inmates set up, waited for officers to come through doors, sometimes one after the other, and take them out of the game and even hold them hostage and stuff. So you have to pay attention to those doors, slice that pie, looking around, until you get to where it's the hardest to see, and then proceed immediately through, right? Don't get stuck there. Don't try and, and hold back and hang out in that doorway. You scan that area and then you walk on through, right? And you keep making sure that you're checking those areas where they can ambush you from. So that's an important thing, and even when you're exiting areas, have there been times where inmates have, got outside doors that they're not supposed to be? Yeah, that's happened, unfortunately, too many times. So you go through that exit, you think it's supposed to be free and clear of inmates. And so what do? You become complacent, right? I talk about complacency all the time. No, you develop that habit. You check the doorway the same way every time, so that you make sure that you get in that habit of, slicing that pie, looking around, making sure that your hard 90 is clear, proceed on through as fast as you can, key that door, whatever it is. but don't hang out in those doorways. A lot of bad things can happen to you there.
Yeah, and I want to mention something too, guys, real quick. I want to compliment on a couple of things that Russ said. So one thing is you always want to make sure those doorways are clear. Now, your communication with that control officer is paramount. I mean, obviously, they may be able to see something from a higher level, but you're also communicating with them to let them know what it's like on that floor. So you don't want to open up that door when you have so many people that are in front of it. Because, again, at any point, the officer goes in, and like Russ said, they can ambush their way out, and then we lose control of an area. That's why you always want to make sure those entrances and those exits are clear. You don't want inmates hanging out there, and you don't want to open up that door when you have a bunch of people hanging out in those areas. So protect those areas. Those areas should never have a bunch of inmates there congregating and interacting unless there's a movement going out. But again, it's a controlled movement, and we're prepared for it. We're ready for it, as opposed to us not being ready. The other thing is, if you work in units that have multiple floors, there should be some communication between the control officers on each floor, so you never have an inmate in there by themselves with any staff member, or a group of inmates by themselves with any staff member. So if you have, let's say, a civilian or a staff member going through the stairwell, there should be some communication with you in the higher level saying, hey, Officer Gangi to Officer Hamilton, yeah, is the stairway clear from your side? Yes, it's clear. Stairway's clear from my side. Let the civilians go. Let the officers go. Whatever it is. At no time should you have any movement where you have an officer and the inmates in that stairwell by themselves. Inmates walk by themselves, and then if you need be, officers and civilians walk up by themselves. That stairway should be cleared at all times, please. I know that's an issue in some places. Get the communication. Do not let anybody in that stairwell until you know it's cleared of inmates, and that's communication between the higher level and the lower level. Would you agree with that, Russ? Because I know that's a concern sometimes.
Yeah, anything that we can do to, try and improve that security, make sure that there's, people out of there, whatever it is, my last example, I was focusing more on, the safety of you going through, in an individual situation. But yeah, anytime those, the stairwells or the entryways or any of these things might have inmates in them, yeah, take that little bit of extra time to try and deal with that. And don't just say, you know what? Nothing's been happening. Always treat it as a potential critical incident, even if it doesn't seem like it at the moment.
Yeah, I kind of branched off on what you said. It made me think. So I figure, if there's a chance, let me just put that advice in there. And then maybe one day we could talk about that a little bit deeper. But I felt, you know what? Let it get out. Now, the last part, and again, we'll have Russ lead the way on this because this totally comes from Russ, is passing along the right information. I think obviously that's key. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, this is that point where, you've been going in and out of your units, your housing areas, dorms, whatever it is, all day long. And, you've been making observations. And if you make a bunch of observations that you think are starting to add up to something, you don't want to just take that home for the night and, I'll see what happens tomorrow. Our shifts run end to end to end. Everything is linked, right? We need to take that information. We need to pass it on somehow. Now, in this day and age of technology, you might know the people that are coming on. You might be able to shoot them an email. Maybe you're going to have a shift briefing between. Some places still do that. Unfortunately, many don't. Maybe you're going to need to pass it on. Maybe the supervisor comes in early and you'll tell him. Maybe you're going to write it in a logbook somewhere that that they have to sign in on, but you want to pass some of that on. You want to say, hey, today it appeared that, maybe there were some potential issues between the Bloods and the Crips, or between the whites and the Northern Hispanics, whatever it is, right? And start passing that on. You might also, make some notes in there about, hey, there were some guys that seemed a little uptight in, dorm 19, not sure what that's about, but it'll give a chance for those individuals that are coming on duty to go and check those things out and to improve that safety and security, right? Maybe those guys that were down there in that dorm, maybe they were a little bit uptight because I was there earlier and they're expecting a little shipment of dope or a cell phone or whatever it is, but it gives a little kernel of information that maybe someone else can exploit, right? We don't keep all that stuff to ourselves. We pass it on because it's of no good to us once we go home.
Right. And guys, just to touch on that, I mean, when we're doing our rounds, obviously we're intel gathering too. So, I mean, to do the rounds, and if you see something unusual, if you feel something's up with the temperament of the unit, to not pass that information along, it doesn't make any sense, guys. We're here to work together. And plus, that keeps the consistency between shifts, between partners, between us and our supervisors. So obviously the intel that we're collecting, I mean, obviously it's good to carry a little notebook with you. I know Guardian RFID does have that digital tracking system. So that's great, because as you're going along the way, you can write what's needed. Because the funny thing is, I think the notebook or the tracking system is great because, you know, as you're doing your rounds, you know, you want to write down the things, or at least a little note, because you may forget by the time you get to the logbook. So it's good to kind of write down something real quick, so you know that I'm going to be able to put this in and get that information out there. Sometimes people will do their rounds, and you know, later on or at the end of the day, they put all their stuff in. Don't do that. You're going to forget. If you have a chance, again, we're not talking about emergency. We're talking about if you have a chance, take some small notes so you know to get right into that logbook and make sure that information's passed off, because again, it could be critical information. And also, the more information that we pass to each other through communication, the more consistent we become, the more we start to realize what each party expects. Like, again, if I'm walking and I see certain things, I may go to Russ, who, you know, is getting the shift after me, and tell Russ what I saw. And Russ could be like, well, you know what? You know, we can go after that, but I would hold off on that. And now we're starting to build a little consistency. And then with the supervisor on board, look at that. Now through that communication we're having, now we're all coming up with this plan that's on the same line. Because what about if we don't communicate? I'm doing things this way and Russ is doing things this way, and the supervisor can give two shits at that point. You know, no. Let's communicate with each other so we can build a bridge, not just among who my partner is or who my supervisor is, but the hardest connection, which is something we've discussed before, is that consistency between shifts. Like what I sweat in my housing unit, is that going to be the same thing that Russ sweats? So the inmates have that same level of expectation. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I want to get to a number 5 bonus tip real quick.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we talked about this a little bit earlier, but one of the things that I like to do on my rounds is I like to have people like towers or other people that can come in through other doors and stuff watch me. And when they watch me, they're able to see the reactions of inmates around me that I can't necessarily see. And that gives us a chance, more likely than not, to be able to intercept all kinds of contraband. I used to, you know, I would sometimes tell the booth officer, hey, you know what? I'm the sergeant. I've got the keys. So don't get up from your podium. I'm just going to come in through the side door, and you just tell me, you know, who reacts badly to it. And then, you know, one other officer would skip out there on the tier with me, and the guy that's, you know, like looking like that deer in the headlights, boom, we'd go after him. Sometimes I'd have the towers watching me, and they'd say, wow, there was a lot of movement inside, you know, dorm 11 or whatever. And so we'd go back, and then when it was time to do our unlock, we'd rush into dorm 11. We'd do a dorm raid. Have people watch you. Have people watch what the inmates around you are doing. They can see it better than you can, which ones are froggy, which ones have something to hide. Guilt gives itself up every time. So just use that as a potential tactic, you know, from wherever they're at. Sometimes you'll enter 2 doors at once and someone will be able to see something. Sometimes you'll have that observation tower, whatever it is. You know what? Figure it out. You'll come up with lots more contraband.
And guys, that's why it's very important that when we do our searches and stuff, we have someone next to us. I mean, we can't watch the inmate reactions as we're 100% focused on the search. So I think that's great, because any shift in their behavior, I don't care how the shift manifests itself. You know, if you have inmates that are active and they're quiet, or they're quiet and now they're active, the point is any shift should be monitored, because now we know, okay, there's a shift for a reason, what's happening. And sometimes we may not be able to see that because we're doing our rounds. And like Russ said, now you got a tower officer saying, hey, guys, these inmates that weren't moving before, they're moving pretty heavily now. Or these inmates that were walking around the yard a lot today, they just stopped when the officer went into this location. So again, it's a shift in a specific behavior. But again, it could be either way. You know, it's not, oh, everybody's moving fast, everybody's moving. No, it's a shift. Look for the shift, and that's where the eyes in the sky, or, you know, just your partners can help. Okay, Russ. Now, would you like to say anything in closing? And thank you for the wonderful, wonderful bonus tip.
It's the bonus tip. Yeah. Hey, I just want to say that, you know what, everyone out there, I hope you're having a great weekend. I hope that, you know, if you're out there pounding the tiers or the yards or whatever, that you're staying safe. Be cautious, be frosty, be nervous. Don't let complacency bite you in the ass.
Now, before we end each show, I'm going to add something new. We're going to learn a unique personal question about our panelists. So today's question that we are going to ask Russ today, and again, this is if you stay to the end of the video, is Russ, what is your favorite cereal?
My favorite cereal? Oh gosh, man, it's got to be Raisin Bran. But I don't get to eat it anymore because I'm keto and I'm intermittent fasting. And so I haven't had a bowl of Raisin Bran in about a year and a half now.
Okay, guys, my favorite cereal today, well, not today, but it is Fruity Pebbles. But I am lactose intolerant, and I haven't had a bowl of cereal since I was 35 years old, and I'm about 44 years old. So
milk.
I know, but it doesn't digest well. But as always, guys, I think this was a great video. A lot of good information that's packed in here. And if you guys haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.